thank you. Thank you, Francisco and Nadine, for inviting us to this event, this Masses and Impersonation event. And what we, I don't know if you know, but what we are going to do is we are making a performance, this kind of lecture performance, in response to this text that you have written. In this, what is the concept of this? The whole thing is we are responding to that, and there was these two texts that you got already, this prologue in person, and this, especially this is the chapter 1, Return Drifter, and it's also the title of this performance. And what we're going to do is we will return into these few texts of high modernism and think how this concept that you were writing about, this the mass, the imperson, and the drifter, how they relate to them. And I will just put it here. This is Return Drifter. And so there is 3 texts, and we will somehow try to present them to you. And after each one, we can somehow talk if something is unclear. But in the end, it would be nice to have a discussion, what is the whole thing. Just talk about it. And we will try to write something that is somehow important. And let's say that all of these texts are somehow some kind of political paradoxes or contradictions. So there, we can talk about what happens in them in the end. And the first text is a few chapters from Joseph Conrad's Secret Agent, the novel written in 1907.
Yes, so in this novel, the main character is Mr. Verloc, who is a shop owner, and his customers are either very young men who hang about the window for a time before slipping in suddenly, or men of a more mature age, but looking generally as if they were not in funds, some with the collars of their overcoats turned right up to their mustaches. And when they finally enter the shop, they duck in sideways, with their hands plunged deep in the side pockets of their coats, one shoulder first, as if afraid to start the bell going. And the younger customers mostly buy some object looking obviously and scandalously not worth the money which passes in the transaction. For instance, a small cardboard box with apparently nothing inside. But in case Mr. Verloc's wife is behind the counter, they request for a bottle of marking ink, which is the cheapest article in the store, and once they're outside, they drop it into the gutter. And the evening visitors, the men with collars turned up and soft hats turned down, nod familiarity to Mrs. Verloc and pass into the back parlor. So the story begins one morning as Mr. Verloc leaves the house on his way westward at the hour of 10:30 in the morning. It was unusually early for him. His whole person exhaled the charm of almost dewy freshness. He wore his blue cloth overcoat unbuttoned. His boots were shiny, his cheeks, freshly shaven, had a sort of gloss. And even his heavy-lidded eyes, refreshed by a night of peaceful slumber, sent out glances of comparative alertness. Through the park railings, these glances beheld men and women riding in the row, couples scantering past harmoniously, others advancing sedately at a walk, loitering groups of 3 or 4. He surveyed through the park railings the evidences of the town's opulence and luxury with an approving eye. All these people have to be protected. Protection is the first necessity of opulence and luxury. The whole social order favorable to their hygienic idleness had to be protected against the shallow enviousness of unhygienic labor. But Mr. Verloc's idleness is not hygienic. He is in a manner devoted to it with a sort of inert fanaticism, or perhaps rather with a fanatical inertness, which means basically that he is too lazy to even bother thinking about it. He is too lazy even for a mere demagogue, for a workman orator, for a leader of labor, and he is a victim of a philosophical unbelief in the effectiveness of every human effort. And this becomes also apparent in his physical characteristics. He is corpulent, fat. So the morning stroll leads Mr. Verloc to an embassy of a foreign country, in which he meets Mr. Vladimir, the first secretary. And through him we learn that Mr. Verloc is an agent provocateur who is infiltrated in a group of anarchists. And an agent provocateur is like a secret agent who is infiltrated and is trying to provoke action in this group, so that sort of kind of like terrorist actions that would be big enough to achieve attention and then incite a reaction in the ruling classes, basically, and in the media. But according to Mr. Vladimir, this Mr. Verloc is not credible as a starving proletariat because he does not have the physique. And also, due to his marriage, he is not a convincing anarchist, because in the words of Mr. Vladimir, anarchists don't marry. It's well known. They can't. It would be apostasy. And the last straw, like basically why Mr. Vladimir has invited Mr. Verloc to see him, is that he hasn't actually provoked anything. He claims that as an excuse that he has prevented things from happening. And to this, Mr. Vladimir says that the evil is already here. We don't want prevention, we want cure. And then he continues. This country is absurd with its sentimental regard for individual liberty. The imbecile bourgeoisie of this country make themselves the accomplices of the very people whose aim is to drive them out of their houses to starve in the ditches. And they have the political power still, if they only have the sense to use it for their preservation. But the middle classes are stupid and have no imagination. They are blinded by an idiotic vanity. What they want just now is a jolly good scare. And according to Mr. Vladimir, a good scare is a series of outrages upon the sacrosanct fetish of today. And in this context, the sacrosanct fetish should be understood as a kind of a representation of an asserted value that is regarded as too important or valuable to be interfered with. And then he begins to explain what in his opinion would be the sacrosanct fetish of today. And he says, an attempt upon a crowned head or on a president is sensational enough in a way, but not so much as it used to be. It has entered into the general conception of the existence of all chiefs of state. An outrage upon a church is horrible enough at first sight, and yet not so effective as a person of an ordinary mind might think. No matter how revolutionary and anarchist in inception, there would be fools enough to give such an outrage the character of a religious manifestation. Therefore, the fetish of today is not religion. A bomb outrage to have any influence on public opinion now must go beyond the intention of vengeance or terrorism. It must be purely destructive. It must be that, and only that, beyond the faintest suspicion of any other object. And according to Mr. Vladimir, a bomb in the National Gallery would make some noise, but it would not be serious enough. There would be some screaming, of course, from the artists, art critics, and such like, people of no account. Nobody minds what they say. So, the fetish has never been art. But there is learning, science. Any imbecile that has got an income believes in that. He does not know why, but he believes it matters somehow. That is the sacrosanct fetish. All the damned professors are radicals at heart. They will be writing to the papers. Their indignation would be above suspicion, no material interests being openly at stake, and it will alarm every selfishness of the class which should be impressed, which is the middle classes, the bourgeoisie. They believe that in some mysterious way science is at the source of their material prosperity. And basically, formulated like this, science is quite akin to a fetish in the traditional sense of an inanimate object worshipped for its supposed magical powers. And so I guess I think it's quite relevant that Vladimir does not suggest, for instance, an outrage on economy, like to have a bomb in a bank or something like that. But this is because there would be like this obvious material interest involved in people who would be offended by kind of this action. And in this outrage on science, the material interest is also involved, but it's not so obvious that it's that the people just feel this kind of threat to their prosperity, this kind of attack.
Yeah, and he wants to make this kind of like most like nonsensical act. Like he wants to like make this kind of terrorist act that doesn't make sense to anybody, because he wants to, like a reaction. There is no political motivation in a way. It doesn't. It has to be this kind of thing that doesn't make sense for him, I think. Do you understand what happened? Okay.
So, that was the first part.
Yeah.
And so the next text we'll be going through is a short story from Fernando Pessoa called The Anarchist Banker, which is written in 1922. Do you want to say something about it?
No, it's a dialogue between two people, you know, and this is written a little bit later than the previous one, and but yeah, well, I don't want to somehow like go through that so much, but it's an argument like how, well, you will see soon.
Yeah. So it's a dialogue between two people. And begins. We have just finished dinner. Across from me, my friend, a wealthy banker, businessman, and renowned profiteer, was smoking absent-mindedly. Our conversation had been dwindling and was now quite dead. I tried to revive it with a thought that happened to cross my mind. I looked at him, smiling. I just remembered, someone told me the other day that you used to be an anarchist.
Yes, and I am still an anarchist, not just used to be.
What do you mean you're an anarchist? Are you an anarchist in the same way as the members of workers' associations who are throwing bombs and rioting on the streets?
No. No, of course there's a difference.
Okay, I see. So you're an anarchist in theory, but in practice?
No, actually I'm an anarchist in both in theory and in practice also. Like actually these bomb throwing anarchists, they are the ones that are not, you know, like they don't have a proper combination of theory and practice. And actually my life is is a proof of this as a whole.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean that there is no gap between theory and my life. You know, this kind of trade unionist, etc., their life is not proper anarchism, not mine. You know, like my life as a banker, a businessman, a profiteer, this is proper anarchism. You know, difference is that they are anarchists only in theory, and they are so they are stupid anarchists. So I'm the intelligent one, I'm the true anarchist.
Yeah, I don't really get this. It's extraordinary, but how do you reconcile your life as a banker and businessman with anarchist theories?
Well, let me explain. Like, you know, I had this kind of like working class background. I had to work, but I was really smart. But like, when I was young, I somehow felt rebellious and I wanted to, you know, do something. I felt resentful. And I tried to understand my feeling. And at around, you know, age 20, 21, you know, I became consciously, logically convinced anarchist. And this same anarchist I'm still today.
So you're saying your convictions are the same as they were?
Yeah, they're the same. There is only one genuine anarchist theory. You know, the point is that like you have to be against the injustice of people being born socially unequal. You know, like some are born millionaires, others are beggars, and this is not something that I can accept. You know, I can accept that someone is superior to me because of natural talent, but I don't accept that someone is superior to me because of social position of his or her family or himself.
But why did you go so far as to become an anarchist?
Well, the point is that like the only real evils in this world, they are these kind of social conventions or fictions, like religion, like family, like money and state, you know, and they are like, these are the ones that like are hiding natural realities. Like we can say that, okay, we are born to be men or women, but we are not born to be husbands or rich or poor or Catholic or Protestants or Portuguese or English. These are like these kind of identities that define us. Like they are these social fictions, and they are bad because they are fictions, because they are not natural. So all fictions are equally bad because they obstruct natural reality. And in this way, like any other system, whatever like way of organizing the social whole, is another social fiction. So if you try to replace one fiction, that would be just absurd or criminal, because then it would be just like another fiction. And because of that, you know, like that would just mean that, okay, everything would be the same, but there would be another fiction that has been changed. And that would be like just causing trouble for no reason. So all fictions have to be destroyed. And this anarchist system, in my opinion, is that okay, there is absence of all social fiction.
But I don't think the anarchist system can never be put in practice.
Why not? You know, like everybody who is progressive thinks that the present system is unjust. You know, and it should be replaced. And if you don't think like that, then they are just bourgeois. You know, like, and now when you think about it, like, where does this notion of justice comes from? It comes from this idea, like, what is true and natural? What is what is natural? It must be completely natural. So either there is two options, like either this kind of natural, free anarchist society can exist, or not. And this means that society is pure fiction. And if society is pure fiction, then we should somehow choose the most natural fiction, the one that feels most natural, which is this one, this present bourgeois system. So there is two options again, like we can just advance anarchism or defend capitalism. There is nothing in between. There is no intermittent stages. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So my conclusion, because so my conclusion was that my goal is like this kind of anarchist free society, and the means to get that would be this kind of revolutionary change from bourgeois to free society with no like transitional phases, because those would be also for social fictions and bad, like because of that.
Okay, I'll follow you up to this point. I understand why and how you became an anarchist, and I can see that you most definitely were one. I don't need any more proofs of that. How a man with your views could become a banker and not feel any contradiction?
Yeah, I will come to that in due time, but first I have to explain how it all happened. So, like, the point is that like these kind of anarchist like principles, they stated, okay, that like the anarchist wants freedom for himself and everyone else. So like these kind of natural gifts that we have, like make people unequal. But from that point on, we can be equal. You know, the social fictions are only thing in the way, and these have to be destroyed. But there is one condition which is very important. Like, in order to promote freedom, not to introduce new fictions. So, only option is overwhelming change. But at this moment, I was starting already to think, like, what about me? Like, what happens to me? Like, who am I sacrificing myself for? And I had this kind of, like, moments of serious doubt. But then I felt this kind of, like, natural justice and duty inside me, and got over it. At that moment, in this kind of emotional way.
Yeah, but you said you are an intelligent person, and so you didn't solve this problem logically, but through emotions.
Yeah, but like I know, but that was at that moment, you know, like I will come to this kind of conclusion that like somehow incorporates both. But at that moment I was emotional, it's true. But this is the story, like this kind of personal story of how I still am an anarchist and how this problem was solved.
Okay. So go on.
Yeah. Okay, so like So I was thinking like that I have this kind of willingness to sacrifice myself without personal reward. But the problem is also like, what if this future society will not be like what I want? I'm not anarchist or free or whatever, you know? And this problem also was logically and automatically resolved at some point when this full awareness of my anarchism was reached. But at this moment I was explaining these conclusions to my friends and they all agreed. But there was this problem that our small group began to show this kind of signs of tyranny. There becomes this kind of like different kind of order in our group.
How do you mean? How did that occur?
Well, some people, they took charge, you know, they started to, you know, make other people follow their orders, you know, it wasn't really serious, but it happened every day. Like some people became leaders and other people became followers. And this just happened like somehow spontaneously and instinctively, like by itself.
Yeah, but that's quite natural that happens, so that's a big deal.
Well, it's completely against our anarchist doctrine. It didn't have anything to do with social fictions. It didn't come from there. You know, like it wasn't because of those. And if you think about that, like if that happens in our small group, which is like 40 people, like that will, like evidently will happen in the bigger group also. That like we'll start to, you know, like that has to make these kind of big decisions. If they also just make another tyranny, then it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's true.
No, this is a critical point. Like I thought, okay, there must be this kind of mistake. That the only thing that we can do is making a new tyranny. So where does this come from? Like why do people start like acting in this way? Like, can it be from natural qualities? That would mean that there is no free society. That then man is like naturally bad, and that can't be the case. And so, like I got into this conclusion that it must be because humanity has been under these social fictions for so long. You know, it's just like forever being under that you cannot get rid of it. That people cannot simply like just leave those social fictions, even if they would want to, even if they would want to try as much as possible. So, like my conclusion was that like one thing is for certain: in our present condition, like no group of men, or like no matter how well-meaning or dedicated to whatever cause, they cannot get rid of this kind of creating another tyranny themselves. But this means that okay, they are actually destroying in practice what they want in theory. So, like my solution is that like we have to work separately, alone. Do you understand?
Yes. But how can you work separately to achieve an anarchist society?
Well, if you work separately, that means that you still have the same goal, you know, like you have the advantage of this joint effort, even though you're not working together, and you don't have this kind of disadvantage of creating a new tyranny. So, like here at last is the true anarchist method. This discovery made me really happy. I was really like ecstatic, and I thought that okay, I have to share this immediately with my comrades. But this was really stupid. And I was really like expecting that okay, they would be really happy also, that they would like agree with me and we could somehow just like agree that now we all just like leave and like just work on our own for the same purpose.
But I suppose they didn't like this idea.
No. They disagreed. Everybody disagreed, and I realized that like how like that what kind of like ninnies and cowards they were. Like they had really shown their true colors. Like they had really been born to be slaves. These people.
And did you get angry?
I was furious. I was really angry, and I left the group. And I almost like quit believing in anarchism. But after a few days, I came to my senses, and I decided like, okay, so nobody wants to, you know, like follow me on the true path of anarchism, so I will do it alone then. I will fight these social fictions without even having the moral support of anybody. So I was starting to think like, what can I do then? And I again reasoned with my like clear thinking there alone. And, okay, there is a war between me and these social fictions. So how can I defeat them? Or pave the way for a social revolution, or prepare humanity for a free society and this kind of thing. So there is two methods, I thought. Okay, there is indirect action, which means like propaganda, making propaganda. And then there is direct action. And I immediately like understood like, okay, the first one, like this, the indirect action or propaganda is not suitable for me. Like I'm not a writer or a speaker. So it had to be direct action. So fine. So I chose this kind of path of action instead of intelligence. And I started to think like how to apply to practical life this basic method of anarchist action, like how to struggle against social fictions without making new tyranny. How is it possible? And I was thinking, okay, it's a war between me and the fictions, and war means that you have to kill the enemy or you have to imprison the enemy. In other words, you have to destroy the enemy or you have to make it incapable to act. And I realized, okay, like I don't have the power, to destroy the fictions. That could be only done by this kind of like social revolution. But the most what I could do is to kill some representatives of the system. But there would be more of them, and the social fictions are bad in themselves, not like that they would, be because of their representatives. You cannot fire shots at social fictions. So the only possibility would be to imprison or make them inactive. So that's what I did. I imprisoned them.
How did you do this?
Well, like I was thinking, like, what is the biggest social fiction? This is the one that I have to really like pay attention to. And the biggest social fiction is, of course, money. So I have to like subdue the power of money. I have to withdraw from its influence. So I have to withdraw from like one option is to withdraw from civilization, to be naked and live like an animal. This could be done easily, and it would be maybe also fun. But like then I thought, okay, this wouldn't be fighting. This would be escaping. And there has to be another method of fighting, not fleeing. And so the only possibility that I could think of is to acquire it, to acquire a lot of money, so that I wouldn't anymore feel its influence. So like the more money I have, the more free I'm of its influence. So at that moment I entered this current phase of my anarchism, which is this banking and business phase. So like by freeing myself of money, like I'll achieve this kind of goal of anarchist method, which is this freedom. It's only for me though, but I have proven that this freedom for all is possible only through, like when all social fictions are gone. And I cannot do that on my own. I can get freedom only for me. So this is the method I followed. I started making the fiction of money ineffective in my life by getting rich. And I succeeded in it. It wasn't easy, but I really did it. And I worked and I struggled and I made money and I worked harder, struggled harder and made more money again. And I got a lot of money. And I didn't really think of the means. I used all kinds of shady methods to get money. And why wouldn't I use these methods? Because I was fighting immoral and unnatural social fictions. So why should I worry about the means? I was striving for freedom. Why worry about the weapons used to fight tyranny? So this kind of stupid anarchist, who kills people, knows that he's committing a crime to attack immorality. He feels that this kind of destruction of that immorality justifies the crime. But this is a stupid, counterproductive method. My method is correct. And I also have solved the problem of self-sacrifice. I got rich, I am free, I can do what I want.
Okay, this is all fine and good, except for one thing. The necessary conditions of your method were to create freedom, not to create tyranny. But you have created tyranny by becoming a profiteer, a banker. Isn't this a tyranny? You have created as much a tyranny as the representatives of any other social fiction you claim to oppose?
No, my friend, like you are mistaken. I haven't created no tyranny. Whatever tyranny struggle against social fiction did not originate in me. Like it's not my creation. Tyranny is in the social fictions themselves, and I cannot destroy them.
So you really are an anarchist. But I can't help but laugh when I think about you in comparison with the other anarchists.
Yeah, but as I've already explained and proven, my friend, the only real difference is that they are anarchists in theory, while I'm the one in theory in practice. They are this kind of mystical anarchists, while I am a scientific one. They are anarchists who cringe, while I'm an anarchist who fights and achieves freedom. They are, in word, pseudo-anarchist, while I'm a genuine one.
Okay, so that was the second part. And if there's any questions, we will take them now. No? Then we will continue. So,
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, who is the drifter?
oh, we will get into it later.
This is an impersonator, but it's also a director.
So, we still have one more part.
Yeah.
So these two texts were written by conservative writers. And next we present to you a few fragments that we would like to juxtapose with the previous texts. And what is at stake in these fragments is the beginning of the distinction between the individual and the mass in moralism. And the fragments are from the Passagenwerk or Arcades project by Walter Benjamin, written between 1927 and 1939.
Yeah. So like Benjamin is like usually thought of as this kind of like theoretician of the flaneur, but we will now somehow talk more about the mass. He talks about mass also. I think like he has been like gravely misunderstood. But we let's say that this flaneur, as you probably know, is this kind of like historical figure mostly connected to this kind of Parisian city life. Like of late 19th century. It is one of these kind of first important modernist figures in literature and like especially in Baudelaire. And it designates usually this kind of solitary, loitering person, like endlessly going through the streets of the city, like for no apparent purpose. He watches the city as it would be a natural phenomenon. Like at the same time, inside and the outside. He is inside, but he's also on the outside. He's like detached. He's an observer, and as an observer, he's like his detachment makes him an insider. He's not he doesn't want to somehow accept that he is actually not like this kind of common laborer. Like a person who works, because he wouldn't have like time to go to the streets. He instead he belongs to the elite, but would not prefer to be identified with it.
So I will read a passage from this Passagenwerk. Streets are the dwelling place of the collective. The collective is an eternally unquiet, eternally agitated being that, in the space between the building fronts, experiences, learns, understands, and invents as much as individuals do within the privacy of their own four walls. For this collective, glossy enameled shop signs are a wall decoration as good as, if not better than, an oil painting in the drawing room of a bourgeois. Walls with their post-note bills are its writing desk. Newspaper stands its libraries, mailboxes its bronze busts, benches its bedroom furniture, and the cafe terrace is the balcony from which it looks down on its household. The section of railing where road workers hang their jackets is the vestibule, and the gateway which leads from the row of courtyards out into the open is the long corridor that dawns the bourgeois, being for the courtyards the entry to the chambers of the city. Among these latter, the arcade was the drawing room. More than anywhere else, the street reveals itself in the arcade as the furnished and familiar interior of the masses. So, the masses in Baudelaire, they stretch before the flaneur as a veil. They are the newest drug for the solitary. Second, they efface all the traces of the individual. They are the newest asylum for the reprobate and the proscript. Finally, within the labyrinth of the city, the masses are the newest and most inscrutable labyrinth. Through them, previously unknown tonic threads are imprinted on the image of the city.
And the last quote is this, it goes like this actually, I will just read it. So, like individuality as such takes on this kind of heroic outlines. It's heroical. Like as the masses step out, like more decisively into the picture. Like this is a historical like moment when the masses become this kind of, like when the masses come. Before that, there was no masses. This is the origin of the concept of the hero in Baudelaire. Like in Hugo, it is a matter not of the isolated individual, but as such, but of this kind of democratic citizen. This implies a fundamental difference between the two poets. So, and the resolution of this discord would have as precondition the dispelling of the illusion which it reflects. So the illusion is the mass, like according to Benjamin. And where am I? This illusory appearance comes from the concept of the masses. Considered apart from the various classes which join in its formation, the mass as such has no primary social significance. Its secondary significance depends on the ensemble of relations through which it is constituted at any one time and place. A theater audience, an army, the population of a city, they all can become masses, which in themselves belong to no particular class. The free market multiplies these masses rapidly and on a colossal scale, insofar as each piece of merchandise now gathers around it the mass of its potential buyers. The totalitarian states have taken this mass as their model. The people's community aims to root out from single individuals everything that stands in the way of their wholesale fusion into mass of consumers. The one implacable adversary still confronting the state, which in this ravenous action becomes the agent of monopoly capital, is the revolutionary proletariat. This latter dispels the illusion of the mass through the reality of the class. This is the end.